Now it's my pleasure to introduce our panelist for today's webinar, Larry Harding, Vice Chairman and Executive Director for Corporate Development for Radius. Frequently referenced as an expert resource for international trends in publications like the Wall Street Journal and CFO Magazine, Larry was awarded the prestigious Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award for 2013 in the Maryland region. Prior to Radius, Larry served as Vice President of International Finance for Sienna Corporation, where he managed, developed, and implemented the financial accounting and compliance functions for Sienna's international operations, which included over 30 overseas offices in Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Larry is a licensed CPA in Massachusetts and holds a Bachelor of Science in Economics with a dual major in Finance and Accounting from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Hello, Larry.
Hi, Ed. Thanks for the introduction. Appreciate it. As one of the founders of Radius, I established the firm originally to focus on helping the Office of the CFO, Finance, Legal, HR deal with the challenges that they experience when operating overseas. The services we now provide include international accounting, finance, global banking, tax, HR, legal, and compliance services. We also try and pull all these services together utilizing a software platform that we've developed called Overseas Connect, which allows you to manage and control these overseas offices from the desktop. In short, what we tried to build was a company that really was geared specifically to helping finance and accounting professionals deal with the challenges of overseas offices. So I recently had the opportunity to pull together an ebook that has so far been well received in the market for winning globally. So the webinar today really is sort of a brief run through of the different elements that we touched upon and that have been well received so far. So the 10 different items that we try and focus on and we'll go through in the webinar here today include deciding when to go, when is the time right to think about taking your business overseas, where to specifically think about going in terms of markets, the team that you need to think about to properly support your organization as it begins to consider and execute an overseas expansion, some of the different financial elements that need to be understood, registration and entity establishments, talking about some elements that will drive how long it takes to become operational overseas, where within the markets that you might select you should think about physically actually going to and what some of the different criteria there are, thoughts around hiring, common sort of surprises and missteps that we have the opportunity to experience a lot with our base of prospects and customers, and things to think about in the future in terms of your overseas expansion. So winning globally, my goal here today is really to offer very practical operational advice to think about so that you have a handful of tools available to you really to help support your organization as you begin a new overseas expansion or maybe consider an expansion into different markets, and really what some of the items are to think about while you're there. So no surprise to this group, the world has changed quite a bit in the last 5 to 10 years, and some of the changes have been fairly surprising. But one of the great drivers is that to the degree that there are domestic markets that your business is succeeding in, the odds are highly likely that there are also global markets for you to think about going to. There are a handful of interesting different drivers behind some of those global markets. But basically, the reasons to think about expanding would be to think about selling your product or services into rapidly growing economies. In many cases, the overseas markets are growing much more rapidly than maybe the U.S. or more developed world economies are. Innovation has driven a lot of opportunity, whether it's new technologies that have a ready market in these overseas locations or just better, more effective ways of doing things, even better, more effective ways of actually expanding overseas. So innovation has been a really big driver in the globalization trend. There are different business opportunities and significantly greater wealth in some overseas markets. So in many, many places, especially in the developing world, there are massively growing numbers of folks entering the middle class for the first time. That creates a great market opportunity. And really, although the trend is maybe drifting, dialing back a little bit against this, in general, there are much lower barriers to trade and hurdles in front of you to go into foreign markets than there were certainly 10, 20, 30 years ago. So these are all really helpful reasons, I think, behind the explosive growth in globalization that we've seen for the last 10 or 15 years, and which is showing no signs whatsoever of slowing down. In fact, if I were to guess over the next 10 years, it's going to be increasing even more rapidly.